going to be walking you through a presentation of Los Angeles and climate change. So just to give you an idea of the population, we're dealing with just under 4 million people in the city of Los Angeles itself. But if we extend that to look at the metropolitan statistical area as a whole, we're looking at a little over 10 million people altogether. Los Angeles has the largest Latino population in the United States. There's also estimated to be around 23,000 homeless people in the city of Los Angeles. There are a high concentration of homeless people, particularly within the city center. Now here you'll see poverty rates. Another alarming statistic is the fact that we have a lot of people over the age of 65 and a lot of people under the age of 18 living in poverty. About 30% of the population is earning less than $25,000 a year.
See, I'm going to walk us through the hazards that Los Angeles faces with anthropogenic climate change. So it's clear that Los Angeles is warming, and there has been a warming trend for well over 100 years. 100 years ago, there was an average of 2 days over 90 degrees per year. And then in 2008, so just 5 years ago, there was 25 days over 90 degrees per year. So that's over a 12 times increase. Under business as usual greenhouse gas emissions, temperature increase is going to be between 3.7 and 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I want to walk us through sea level rise and wildfires, which are two other hazards Los Angeles faces. By 2100, sea level rise ranges from approximately 0.9 meters to 1.4 meters. For wildfires, which is another hazard Los Angeles faces, fire occurrence will increase with climate change, as will the rate of spread. And then the final hazards I want to talk about both deal with precipitation. And I want to mention that Los Angeles has been adapting for both of these for many, many years. Between 1917 and 1965, Los Angeles built one of the most extensive flood protection infrastructures on the planet. And after the 1950s, there have been no more catastrophic floods, despite increased rainfall and urbanization. And then regarding drought, 50% less rainfall is possible. Even if precipitation levels don't change, though they're expected to, higher temperatures are going to lead to more frequent droughts.
We've listed out each of the hazards that we've identified and really tried to look at what was going to be affected and what's going to be really vulnerable for the population of Los Angeles. So for temperature change, it's really important to point out the fact that the elderly, young, sick, and poor are going to be particularly prone to heat stresses. Temperature change can also have infrastructure impacts, leading to subsidence and also road damage, or the cracking of asphalts. Sea level rise definitely poses a threat to critical infrastructure like the Port of Los Angeles and Los Angeles International Airport. The Port of Los Angeles and LAX both have gigantic tank farms where they're keeping petrochemicals. And if those are compromised, it could be very dangerous for the marine wildlife there. In terms of wildfire, we know that there is definitely a potential for infrastructure damage, for bringing down high voltage power lines. And also, this increases the risk of another hazard, which is flooding and landslides. Both sea level rise and wildfire tend to affect more affluent residents within Los Angeles. Sea level rise affecting those affluent communities that live near the coast. Wildfire affecting more affluent communities in the hillsides, like the Hollywood Hills and the San Fernando Valley. In terms of flooding, we know for a fact that it has a high potential to cause damage to private property as well as firms. Also increases the potential for landslides. But again, this is another area that largely affects affluent populations. So what we wanted to do with this is take all of the hazards that we've identified and map them out to see what their impact would be. We are taking a very pro-poor position with this presentation. So if you take a look at this chart, automatically from the get-go, we can see that sea level rise, wildfire, and flood do not really affect the poor. So we can, right off the bat, eliminate those hazards from our analysis. And that leaves us with drought and temperature. So the key takeaway from this risk summary is the fact that we know through our analysis that Los Angeles must adapt to increases in temperature and extreme heat events.
LA is the leading city in climate change planning, with a number of effective policies and adaptive frameworks already in place. LA's current adaptive framework serves as a gold standard. So instead of proposing what's already being done, we've decided to look at the current structures on a granular level to see who's being underserved despite the robustness of the current measures that are in place. And so we've kind of broken it out into three of the most vulnerable target populations. Number one being undocumented immigrants and non-English speaking populations. The homeless, in 2011, they documented 23,539. And then the elderly. LA has a very large elderly population, and it's due to increase by 867,000 over the next 20 years. Our proposed adaptation response is Stay Cool LA. It's a cross-sectoral task force that will work specifically with these vulnerable populations to educate, prepare, and facilitate through specialized programming. Our main goal is for Stay Cool LA to act as an agent of change that will help the city and state governments to improve future planning. And it will work through community-based member organizations to create a peer-to-peer dynamic. Stay Cool LA will also increase access to temperature adaptation, such as low-cost water access, cooling centers, energy-efficient cooling units, etc. There is already a complex framework in place that will act as the parent program to Stay Cool LA, and that's Adapt LA, which is currently being used right now. It has four major components to address climate change: evaluation, assessment, partnership, public engagement. Stay Cool LA will be subsidized by the Adapt LA parent program and will rely on the pooling of resources from community-based organizations. The Stay Cool LA task force and planning will be executed in two bold ways: from the bottom up, through the work of nonprofit organizations that are already working with these communities. We also have a top-down strategy where city leaders will work with large and small firms to help augment heat preparedness in the commercial sector.